Hello and welcome. My name is Madeline Longoria Garcia, and these are our other stories. Today on the podcast, we have Adriana Rodriguez joining us, who is a licensed marriage and family therapist, educator, community builder, and host of Entre Tías y Amiguis podcast. Adri specializes in generational healing, family systems, and supporting first-gen professionals, adult children of immigrants, and people who are breaking cycles to create healthy patterns for themselves and future generations. Adri, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, and I wanted to share too that we met I would say in the last couple of months online. I wanted to share this through a virtual space that our fellow friend and jefa, Kita, has created. She also has a podcast. I'm just going to shout out all the podcasts right now.
Yeah.
Yours, Adri, Entre Tías y Amiguis, which I listen to, and it's so fun, the conversations that you have, and I really appreciate those. And then Kita has her podcast, Cafecito con Jefas, and this whole amazing online gathering community space that she's built that is bringing people together, And so I'm thankful that she's created that space. I'm thankful that space has created connections for me, and I know so many other people. And I'm grateful that we started chatting more recently and that you reached out to chat about this. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited. One of this community is the crossover of our different experiences. I get to be in a lot of therapy spaces, educator spaces. And what I love about Cafecito con Jefas is just that we get to cross paths with people that normally we wouldn't, be in community with. And so, I was like, how would Madeline and I come into community with, aside from this? And so it's pretty awesome to have a space like that.
Yeah. And I find that a lot of those really started popping up during the pandemic out of necessity of trying to find community in other spaces. And there have been so many of these that I have had the opportunity to be a part of, and connecting with other people all over the nation has been so cool. And again, that same thing of when else would I have crossed paths with these people? Who knows? And so it's really cool. And specifically for us, I feel like this has been so strong within the Latina community and creating these online spaces for us to connect and collaborate and create all of these things together. So
exactly. No, and we had to become resourceful, and here we are a few years later still using this spaces, and so I love it.
No, I love it too. I love that it wasn't just a blip with the pandemic. No, they're continuing on, they're growing, and it's very cool to continue being a part of them.
Yeah.
So, we are nearing the end of season 1 of Our Other Stories. And this whole season has been about migration stories and folks sharing their personal stories, their family stories, and I think a big conversation that comes up in these shared spaces between you and I are first-gen experience, second-gen experience, being children and grandchildren of immigrants, and what that feels like, these commonalities that we share that are really hard to describe to other people. And something that I've learned really through this first season is the realization that it doesn't really matter where people are coming from physically in the world. There are these very common threads of, I guess, emotional experiences that we have that kind of connect us. And there is just this easier understanding, I guess, of where people are coming from. Yeah, you reached out to me to be like, hey, I think I'm ready. I think I want to share this. And I would like to see what that would look like if there's this space in the season. And I was like, yes, 100%. Let's do it. And I usually like to just allow people to start wherever they want to in sharing this part of their story. And so, can you take us through and starting wherever you'd like to?
Yeah. I reached out because as a therapist, I am exactly the therapist that I've needed throughout my entire life. I've become a specialist in everything that I've gone through and healed and worked through, and the current triggers that still show up, right? I think, though, I don't spend a lot of time explaining kind of like that bridge of how did I get here and why this very, very hard work is actually a really enjoyable, painful, difficult, but actually really enjoyable, because I get to see people kind of on the other side when they understand how their mental health as individuals is connected to their family of origin, but their family of origin is inevitably impacted by the societal systems and the sociopolitical environment that that family is growing up in, right? And so what that leads us to is kind of this legacy of like a lot of pain, traumatized, hurt people that have been surviving and doing literally the best that they can. Because I always want to make space to say, like, I want to offer deep compassion to the generation that came and that parented us the best way that they could. And they also had a lot of pain that was not worked out. And that pain passes down generation until someone says, wait a minute, I kind of don't think this fits for me, right? And so for me, this story of myself and my own migration story, because even though I navigate a lot of first gen spaces, and by all definitions, I am a first gen, I am also a teen immigrant, which is a very different story, I think, than being like a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, a 2-year-old immigrant.
100%.
I was about to turn 16 when I got to the US. And so I had a whole plan of my life. I already knew what my adult life was going to look like. I had my community, my friends, all of the things.
Your plans, your goals, like everything. Yeah.
Everything. As a 16-year-old, you already are like in that place of like decision making, right? And so all of a sudden it's just like, look, we're going to go somewhere else. And so that puts me into this category of like the immigrant experience. It's not my parents, it's my immigrant experience too. And also all the things that I've had to figure it out on my own through the years and years of like not having a lot of role models that were living the life that now I live over here, right? And so I want to start talking about my migration story from like a contextual systems place, historical place, because El Salvador, so I'm originally born and raised in El Salvador, and El Salvador from 1979 to 1992 had a civil war, right? Civil war implies that it's within fighting, guerrilla, military, and they're fighting. But what many may not realize, that our civil war was funded by the imperialist state of the United States, who now currently hates the immigrants so much.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be here if the US would have not had their little hand
meddled
in my country. And maybe I would be enduring other things and I would be having a different life, which is valid, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it would have been a bad life either. There's no way of knowing, right?
Exactly.
But my life and my family's life was deeply impacted by this war that El Salvador, very uniquely, unlike other countries in Central America, is an ally of the United States, because El Salvador served as a sort of centralized place where the war against like the Communist Party in Nicaragua and Honduras and Costa Rica and Panama, like all of those things that were going on, El Salvador was kind of like, oh, we'll help you, US. Right. And so in there, because El Salvador is so small, and you would think, why are there so many people in the diaspora, Salvadorian diaspora outside of El Salvador? Is because our country got destroyed. Destroyed, right? And so I was born in 83. So I'm born, right, 79, 83, 4 or 5 years into that war. My parents were 20 years old when they had me, right, as very commonly for the era. And I can't imagine, as I've gotten to go through the stages of life, being a 20-year-old with a baby in the middle of a civil war.
Civil war, yeah.
Like the thought of it is so baffling, of like, how does even one survive? And we even have a story about when my sister was born, that there was curfew. And so they had to go knocking on neighbor's house and find somebody that had a car, a truck, because we were poor, so we didn't have a vehicle. And they had to put my pregnant mother about to deliver in the back of this like neighbor's truck. And my dad had to be in the back waving a wait flag. a white flag so that
Wow.
they could get through, you know?
Wow.
And so
Is
now
she,
as a
is your sister younger or older? Because I did the same
younger,
thing have to younger. So that same situation didn't play out. Like there wasn't curfew when you were born or
at least not that I know of, there's
okay.
possibly other hardships, but like that
Yeah.
story just kind of
Yeah.
highlights so much of just like, what the heck? Like you put a
Yeah.
pregnant lady in the back of the truck and wave a white flag so that the military doesn't stop you and kind of lets you
Yeah.
go. Like that is kind of like wild, right?
Yeah.
I have my own memories of sleeping on the ground. We used to have to take the mattresses off the bed and put them on the windows, and you would hear like the shots.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have like that sound vividly in my
Wow.
head, and sleeping on the ground. I have memories of bodies piled up on the street. And so, trigger warning, there's a lot
Mm-hmm.
of just kind of like war related like imagery that I'm describing. And so, bodies and tanks and armed military kind of walking around, right? Like, that is like my 0 to 5 childhood was
Yeah.
literally in this war. It is hard to talk about this because who wants to hear about that? And when I've
Yeah.
shared it, it's like when you experience trauma, you become like really hyper vigilant, right, of people's reactions as you're telling the story. And very quickly, I have been communicated lovingly, unintentionally, that my story is too big, too
Yeah.
much to
Yeah.
be heard.
Yeah.
And that makes it really tough because, now I'm 42 years old. And sometimes I think about this story and I'm just like, that's a fever dream. That cannot be real. Like, how do you lay on the ground and hear like the
Yeah.
bombs and the bullets, and
Yeah.
on an occasion a bullet had gone through our mattress, and we'd
Yeah.
be in the middle room of our house because being in the front room was too close. Being in the back, people could jump in your backyard, and
Right.
these things feel like a fever dream to discuss
Yeah. Yeah.
and so it's such a it's been a difficult experience to make space for it because I know how hard it is to hear it. Likely, probably, I could only
I
imagine.
mean, yes, and these are the things that people need to be aware of. Like these are the stories that people need to be aware of because especially in the United States, in like Western imperialism, we have been sold this idea that, oh, but we're helping, we're making it better, we're helping these people, all of this stuff, like we're making these countries so much better, becoming quote unquote democracies, all of this stuff. And the reality of the folks who are living that is no, our homes are being destroyed. It is no longer safe in our own homes, in our neighborhoods, in our communities. Suddenly, a foreign entity is not just funding this, but is also boots on the ground, actively participating in the violence that is being perpetrated against my people and my community. And this isn't what we wanted. And we see this like when we look at the history of the United States and Latin America, it is all over Latin America, this exact scenario of war and aggression. And it's the US meddling and the people most of the time being like, we don't want you to come here and do this actually. So I want to say like I think it is, I don't think it's too big of a story. I don't think it's too much. I don't it may be heavy, it may be intense, there may be a lot going on, and I think that all of those details are important to communicate so that people have a grasp and understanding of what actually happened and
Mm-hmm.
also why we have migration.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because it
You
doesn't
know?
happen in isolation, in a vacuum. And then
Exactly.
also there is this, as a therapist, right, this legacy of trauma that I have a
Mhm.
lot of my adult children of immigrants, right, that come and work with me. And they're like, why are my parents so unavailable mentally, emotionally? Why do they say go pray? Or why do they say they're fine, right? And so I feel like really gifted to have a personal
Mhm.
experience to be saying, hey, like, this kind of happened, and I think we need to like make space for it. It doesn't excuse, it doesn't invalidate your pain, it doesn't invalidate the impact, but there is an importance on the context. At least I believe that, because I've had to make space to heal from my own trauma by understanding the context. because
Yeah.
without the context, the story just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense why people behave the way they do. It doesn't make sense why people show up in life the way they do. But when I step back and I think about like, oh yeah, like you were a 20-year-old with a baby in the middle of a war. You were a 24-year-old with taking your wife to a hospital
Yeah.
in the middle of a curfew. Like how do you, I can't imagine being a 24-year-old doing those
Yeah.
things, right? And so
Yeah.
I have had to develop a counter response for like how painful this story is. The context for me has been incredibly helpful, right? So for me,
Yeah.
I'm very acutely aware that every part of my life that I'm living now as a whole grown up is inevitably connected to this, right? So that's kind of like the setup. The other part, right, that had in terms of like legality, right? Our country's getting destroyed, but there's still no pathway to get any support, right? And so what stops happening is that then people start migrating out. My math serves me correctly, and I'm strange for my family. So I was fantasizing last night that I could have called so and so and so and so to verify the facts. And so I had to like access like my own memories. But my first aunt, my mom's sister, would have arrived here in like 81, 82.
Okay.
And so she was the catalyst and the opener for everybody to start migrating because she arrived in LA and she became a nanny, right? Like that is like a job in LA for a lot of the women that immigrate. And so then my aunts, uncles, and everybody started coming to find some work and sort of like small badges. But something really unique that happened to my family is that the adults were the only ones that migrated and all of us were left behind, all the kids.
So you and your cousins, basically.
Me, my cousins, my sister, all of them.
Yeah.
So my grandma, my maternal grandma, so I grew up with my paternal grandma because by the time my parents immigrated, there was no more space for kids in the maternal grandma house because there were 2, 4, 6, 7 kiddos that were living there.
Yeah.
And so my mom and my dad were kind of like the last ones to immigrate. And then everybody else that didn't immigrate, and they kind of stayed. And so in 1990, I was 6 years old. I have a letter box says my mom kept all the letters that I wrote to her when since I was a kid. And the first letter that I wrote was March 7th, 1990.
Wow.
It is so tough to go through those letters and see the worries of like a 6-year-old that has gone from having a family to now this separation. And my mom, she has a 3rd grade education. My father, all the machista sort of stereotypes that you can imagine, domineering, violent. I hear that he's a very changed person now. And like, I hope for his sake that he has healed some of that. But my experience with him, and I know my mother's experience with him, was not that.
Yeah.
And it's really hard because I'm also trying to be really ethical about how I share this story because not all of it is mine. So I'm only speaking from my experiences. And so 1990 comes and my mom's cousin comes and tells her, what if we go to the US? And so they're like, the tia that had already came in the 80s, she has jobs for them and her husband knows people that can help them get here. But everybody was very aware that you bringing children through like the ground was incredibly dangerous and that people's kids were getting hurt. And so all of the family members that came were only the adults, and that's why the kids stayed. And so my aunt comes to my mom. My mom has never worked a day in her life. My dad is the provider, but she has the opportunity to come and work over here. The maternal grandma doesn't have any more space. So then it's like, okay, well, let's do paternal grandma. And my dad stays, and my maternal grandma, and then me and my sister. A year later, my dad ends up coming to the U.S. as well. And so then I stay back over there with maternal grandma, who now, as a licensed clinician, have come to understand that she also has some serious mental health issues for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
My father's father had emigrated also in like the 70s. And so my father, like in the early 70s. And so my
to the United States?
To the United States, to LA, and left his children abandoned too. And so there's this like historical sort of abandonment of the children for the greater good of like we have to create a better status for our family, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things that has been getting triggered for me lately this summer with the ICE raids is this rhetoric of like, do it the right way.
Yeah.
Do
Yeah.
you know what it takes to do it the right way?
Yeah.
It took us, my family, 9 years of separation.
Yeah.
My parents left a little 6-year-old and they came back to almost a 16-year-old.
Yeah.
Like
Completely different people.
different people and
Yeah.
a different hat of parenting that
Yeah.
simply my parents were not ready for. They loved us, cared for us, provided. I went to private Catholic school. We were poor, but there were like some things that we had access to because we would have the money coming in. So I want to acknowledge that I recognize that my parents did the best that they could and they tried really hard and they worked really hard. And even in the poverty that we had, I didn't miss out on anything, right? Anything. Aside from the emotional support of having parents
Right.
around
Exactly.
and being left with a grandmother who is not equipped to be raising children. And so there's this like huge like contradiction of how do you quantify, right? Like this gratitude with also like WTF.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would rather you say like this
Right.
was not as good as it was, right? But in that childhood, you as a kid, right? I'm 6 years old, 7 years old. I'm writing in these letters. I miss you. I'm thinking about you. I'm taking care of my sister. Grandma's okay. I start talking about money with my parents because my grandma and my parents would fight about money. So all the parentification of like the eldest daughter alive and well.
Yeah.
So I come to the United States at 16 years old and I've been an adult since I'm 7, yo. Like, what do you mean you're going to tell me what to do and where to go? And like, oh, I'm mouthy. It's like, do you know why I had to become mouthy? You know the things that adults would say to me and my sister about why you guys left us and when we were bad kids, oh, this is why your mom left and things like that. Like, it's like so loaded, you know, because that context of like the missing years that we had are things that we never recovered from.
Of course. And you developed into a whole person without them. And there is that whole element of you left. Like, why did you leave? I would have rather have had you here to have the relationship and build the memories and have that emotional, like familial experience. And then also I can appreciate, like, you can now as an adult, as a therapist yourself, step away from that and understand like the different perspective and seeing, okay, I understand why this happened. I can do that. But there will always be this kid in you, you know, and how do you nurture that? And also, that's not even touching on the whole experience then of being pulled from your whole life in El Salvador at 16.
Yeah.
And being dropped into a whole different life with parents who don't know who you are, parents who you don't know anymore, and trying to adapt to everything.
Everything. And so, you know, I had been very aware, right? Like the message was, we left you because we love you and because we need to be documented so you can have the opportunities that we want to give you, right? Go to college and all these things. So even in childhood, I had a pretty good understanding that this had a purpose, that there was a reason for it. That was like, okay, they're just working hard and they're waiting for us. And then we're going to move over there. And then I'm going to get to go to college and do all these things, right? I was prepared and ready for like all these promises and all these things. What I wasn't prepared for was the fact that like, I didn't know these people that I was moving in with. I loved them. I cared about them. They loved me and they cared about me. But I lasted in my home 3 years. I moved out when I was 19 because it was so unbearable to live at home. And I love my parents deeply, even now, with the recognition of how the parts that I know of their stories impacted the way that they parented me. I have done a lot of work and try to forgive and, you know, make peace with it all. But there are some moments, and for me, this summer was like really unexpected that with the ICE raids, I started having nightmares and dreams about separation and about my parents and about things, and I literally was like, here we go again. I thought I already did that in therapy. Like, why is it coming again, right? And that has been like a big part of the conversation with a lot of the clients that I work with this summer. It's like, why am I so affected by this one, right? Humanity, like that just means that you're a human that cares. But also, I think this summer with the raids and with seeing people that look like us or our families being inhumanely treated, I think it's activating our ancestral wounds and the wounds of our parents that parented through this lens of this tremendous trauma that they've experienced. Because when you're seeing, like, you know, these families getting pulled apart and not given the opportunity of have due process, and where's the humanity in that? And our parents, many of our parents were terrified that they were going to get caught, and they lived their adult lives going to work probably incredibly terrified that they might not come home. And then what does that mean? Or like, as kids, the ones that grew up here, like thinking that your family is going to get deported, right? So all my story of kind of how I got here, right, like fundamentally starts very early on, even before I was born, in this context of like this country that was torn by war, and like how the adults showed up in my life because of this war that had happened. And so I get here, right, I'm 16 years old, and I'm like, gonna be a good student, gonna be a good kid, family life sucks, but you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna learn English, and I'm gonna do all these things. And I had gone to Catholic school my entire life. So when I came here, they wanted to put me back in 9th grade. I was at the end of 10th grade. And also Columbine happens like within 2-3 weeks that I get here. And I'm just like, school shootings and like violence. Isn't this United States supposed to be the promise? Like, it was a very, very intense time in life, right? And so I get here and they want to hold me back, and they want to send me back to 9th grade. And I was like, absolutely not. I've been college bound for years. I am planning on going to university. I'm planning to do all these things. What I don't know is to speak English.
Right.
And so I found refuge at the school library at my high school, because I had been put in all the ESL classes. And the counselor, a sweet Mexican woman, she said, mija, ¿para qué te preocupas? Todo va a estar bien. Descansa, acabas de llegar. Like, just relax. You just got here, right? And I was like, what do you mean? Like, I'm like this high achieving Catholic.
Like, I gotta go. I got things
to do. What do you mean? And so I removed myself from that space, because I was like, this is not the space where I'm gonna be able to accomplish my goals. And it is so wild to me that as a 16-year-old, I had that in me to say, this is not the space where I get to grow. Because that is so at the core of who I am. It's been like that spidey sense of like, not here. Let's go to the next place where I know that I'm going to be able to do these things. And so the career counselor, because back in the day, for those of you that are in the newer generations, we had no phones, no internet, no anything in 99 when I got here. And so I had a little thing that looked like a calculator that was a translator. And I would go word by word, translating and writing out and all these things. And the career counselor, she helped me prepare to test out into getting into college prep English. And I don't know how I did it, because my 16-year-old self, that girl, she's incredible. I don't know how she did the things that she did, but she found a way. And I tested into college prep because I had done all the literature. Like, I had read Romeo and Juliet, I had read Don Quixote, I had read like all these things. And so I'm like, test me, like I can do it. It's just in Spanish, right? And so the college prep teacher also had heard about me through the career counselor. And then these 2 white women, they were like, no, like, we want to help you get on track. And so they, the teacher allowed me to enroll in her class so that I could take 9th grade that summer, 9th grade college prep English. Then I went into 10th grade English. The next summer I took 11th grade English, and then 12th grade English, because everything else, science, math, everything, I brought all my grades. And I went to the office and I was like, look at my grades though. Like, I've already done all of this. You put me in chemistry, I already know how to do that. You put me in algebra, I already know how to do this. I just don't know how to say it in English.
Right. It's a language issue. It's not a knowledge issue.
But I wasn't being provided the support to address this. They were seeing it as a lack of capacity. It's going to take too long for you to catch up. And I was like, absolutely not. So
was this in Los Angeles?
Here in Sacramento.
In Sacramento.
in
Okay.
Sacramento. My
Yeah.
parents moved to Sacramento because my mom used to nanny for a
Okay.
family. So after living in LA for many years, where all the rest of the family lives, they moved to Sacramento for more opportunity. And so when we came to the US, we entered through LA, but we came directly to Sacramento.
And I just feel like everything you're describing academically is also so, while you are, the the person who migrated from El Salvador to the United States, this is so I guess related to what a lot of first gen, and I truly think like second gen, speaking from my own experience, it's like the no, I need to hit all the goals. Like these are the things I know how to do and I am capable of, and I'm going to outperform what your expectations are. And this is something that has come up in other conversations too, of like these almost like perfectionist, not almost, these perfectionist tendencies and these things that we put on ourselves because we've also heard it from other people our whole lives of like, you have to perform better than everybody because you are an immigrant, you are brown, you are different, you have to, English is your second language, like you have to outperform everybody. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I
It's
am amazed that like 16-year-old you is like not discouraged, but like emboldened by this system basically telling you like, no, we're going to hold you back. No, we're going to slow you down. And you being like, no, you're not going to do that actually. And here's why. And I'm going to prove to you I am more than capable and I know everything that you're trying to tell me I don't know. Yeah, that's amazing. That's very impressive. And like,
I think about that version of me and it feels so far away that sometimes it's hard to give it space because it's like, but that's what I was supposed to be doing. Like, it doesn't feel
right.
remarkable, right? And then I share this story and I'm like, oh yeah, that's kind of wild for a 16-year-old to be doing, on her own, on her first year of arriving to the United States and all the home life things that were going on, so everything. And so I end up, finishing high school, like basically completing all the things. I took every after school class that I could take, every summer class that I could take so that I could finish. And I got here at almost 16. And then by 17 and a half, I had finished high school, like in a year and a half, 2 years, because I was bringing all my credits from El Salvador. I was like, you're absolutely not gonna, count this.
Yeah.
And then
which is also like a whole other system to navigate on its own too.
Yeah.
That's
I don't know
also,
how I did it. Like, I have no recollection of how I did these things, but I did them,
Yeah.
And so then the same college counselor lady enrolls me. She tells me about college and she said, you want to go to college? I'm going to help you fill out applications, all these things. Girl, I got into UCLA, into UC Davis, into CSU Monterey Bay, but I didn't know what that meant. So I went to Sac State.
Oh my God. I mean, great. But also, what the fuck?
But I had no idea. And my parents were like, I was 17 and a half, right? I had just gotten here a year and a half later too. They're like, you haven't grown up with us. And so my parents were like, those places are too far away. You don't have a car. You're still 17. So even Davis is too far away, even though it's another 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay. Because my dad was super impressed because he went with me to Sac State for same day admissions and I did the SATs that same day. And if you scored high enough, then you got immediate admission.
Right.
And so my dad had gone with me and he waited outside and he's like, are you going to pass? And I was like, I'm sure, like the English part was always kind of like the weakest part, but you put me math, you put me science, like, I got you. Like, this is easy for me. And so, I went in, took the test, came out with apparently really high scores. And they were like, you're in Sac State. And so then my parents were like, great, we live 7 minutes from Sac State. You can walk, you can take the little shuttle. So you're going to Sac State. And at this point, maybe even after graduating from Sac State, I didn't even understand the difference between a UC, a private university. I had no idea.
Yeah.
So I went to Sac State and
That's incredible. I'm just like, Adri, I just like pause because like, what the fuck? Like, you got into all of these schools. Like, I know I didn't get into UCLA, okay? I was a good student. But like, I didn't get into UCLA. I just like, that's incredible to me that you got into all of those universities a year and a half into being in this country. Yeah.
Because I was doing what I was supposed to do. My parents told me, we're
Right.
leaving you behind for the reason that you have to be ready to go to college. That is why you're going
Yeah.
to the United States, to go to college and to get an education. And so this is another like weird fact about my life is that I also grew up Jehovah's Witness.
Okay.
So being Jehovah's Witness, going to Catholic school, all of these things are very contradictions. Like I lived in a lot of contradictions. And so I feel like that has been also like at the core of how I know how to navigate so many things, because this side is saying no, this side is saying yes. Well, how do I make a decision between like the contradiction that I'm experiencing? And that was like my entire life. Right. And so when you're a Jehovah's Witness, you believe in paradise. You believe that at some point Jehovah is going to destroy the earth and you are going to be, as a witness, in charge of rebuilding earth. So I wanted to be an architect or an engineer because my whole life was supposed to be of service to God. And so Sac State didn't have an engineering program, as an architecture program. So then I went in as a engineering major. And so I was 2 years as a systems engineer, computer engineering. And it was way too quiet for me. Like I was just like, this is quiet. I'm coding. I'm learning. Everybody's here. And I remember one time just crying quietly while I'm coding in like that old computer with the green text,
With
just
the
like
green, yeah.
matrix, and I'm just like, this is too quiet. Like I don't like it here. And then at the same time, I was taking a bunch of sociology classes because sociology started explaining the United States to me. I didn't take U.S. history at all, like all of those things, right? Political.
Right.
Like I came in to just get what you need and kind of keep going, right? And so then I started taking sociology of this, sociology of that, and I'm like, what? There is this whole world out there, and there is all these people that believe all these different things. And I started going to church, and I'm just kind of like, I'll question because in class. And so then this is another cultural clash that then happens for me, that I'm not only dealing with coming to a new country, but facing a secular and a religious world that I really, really deeply believed in. I'm dealing with like adjusting to these adults that suddenly want to be my parents and they're not very nice. And I just want to do what I want because I'm a good kid. Like I just got into all these universities. So why are you bossing me around? Like I got me. You know? Yeah. And so at 19, I ended up moving out because I just couldn't be home anymore. It was just impossible. And so I was at Sac State, moved in with my then boyfriend into like a 1-bedroom apartment. And we were just like, we'll figure it out. And I put myself through college.
Yeah.
And I finished. You know, and it wasn't easy, like being at Sac State, and maybe it was like a protection to my own identity as a student that for some reason I didn't get to go to these other schools because I probably would have struggled a lot because the system was just incredibly different than the higher ed system that I had prepared for in El Salvador, you know. And so I went to Sac State and had a wonderful experience in some ways, a very difficult experience in another, a lot of hardship. And I ended up changing my major to sociology because I just really stopped believing a lot of the things that I believe because these contradictions didn't make sense anymore. Yeah. And I just got like a thirst for this other world that I had never been taught about. One, because El Salvador is very different. You know, things like racism work very different when you are kind of like part of the group of the majority. Colorism shows up different, classism shows up different. And so I'm learning about social justice, social injustice, systemic oppression. I'm learning about different people and how they deal with their cultures, right? So I'm like this, like, 16 to like 23-year-old, like that period of ending high school and being in undergrad, where I'm just like, this world is so exciting. So for me, like, I feel like what kept me going through despite all these things was just that I was just really excited to feel powerful and in charge of my own life. I just felt like I can do this. I can do anything. Look at this, and that. I got it. And I've always kind of had this mentality of like, I didn't come this far to go this far, and this can't be as good as it gets. If I'm unhappy with something, then I change it. If I don't like how this is going, well, then I do something else. And that's also when I started learning that systemic oppression was a real thing, and that there are all these barriers that are present and perpetuated to make it hard for you to get there. And so I found a way to balance out, how do I, become palatable to like white people?
Yep.
How do I become, how do I talk, and how do I say
Yeah.
this, and what accent do people prefer versus the
Yeah.
other? I became such a like a hyper aware person that the more that I chameleon myself into
Yeah.
places, the easier things got, and therefore I would be closer to getting what I wanted. But then that really meant that my journey around figuring out who I was as a person was very delayed by
Exactly.
trying to just figure out how to survive in the systems that I was completely unfamiliar with, and that I didn't have support to get through, because I have 52 first cousins and about 30 or so live here in the United States. And out of all my first cousins, I am the only person. Well, my sister now has a bachelor's and a master's as well. For a long time, I was the only person that had not only a bachelor's but also a master's degree. Like,
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
entire family, there wasn't anybody that could help me.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so your whole story is insane. And like there is so much there. And I do want to kind of talk about this experience of I mean, really like learning how to code switch, right? And
Code
learning how
switch,
to
that's the word.
be yeah, learning how to be the person that would get you further in that specific space, right? And then learning how to be a different person in a different space to get the thing out of that. And this is something that I know a lot of people who have these like multifaceted backgrounds, ethnicities, cultures, all of this stuff. Like we do that because it's like a survival mechanism. And I wonder for you, I mean, going into a high school in the United States, I don't know anything about Sacramento really. Like I think I've been there once when I was a little kid. But I even wonder for you showing up into a high school. Was it a public high school that you ended up going to?
Yes, and the worst high school in Sacramento.
Okay, and like what is that experience like suddenly being
So
like,
let me
I
tell
don't
you this.
speak English, I don't know even like the cultural references of all of these kids. Like what is that even? Yeah.
Oh my God. So in California, right, like there is also like this predominantly Mexican sort of
Oh yeah.
nationalist. Every
Yeah.
Latino kind of has this like background as a Mexican person. And so for me, also being 16 years old, I'm like, no, do you guys not understand that there is a whole nother world, and there is
Yeah.
like all these countries in Latin America, and that we all don't speak? And so I also felt very isolated from the Latino students, because in great majority
Sure.
they were Mexican. And
Yeah.
in my opinion, on those days, because I didn't understand systems and how they work, I just saw these kids were goofing off, and they did not come to do what we were supposed to do as good kids of
Yeah.
immigrants who had endured so much, which was go to school and graduate and go to
Yeah.
college and go build a career, because that's what we came here for. So for me, it was just like, you guys are goofing off. Like, I'm not
Yeah.
hanging out with you. And so I used to hang out with this like group of like very small group of girls, and after school I used to take the bus, right? And so they were all like, we're gonna stay after school. And this later on I came to find out that I was actually Sureña affiliated. I was hanging out with the Sureños because these were like the recent comers, and I was just like, these are just all the other kids that speak Spanish. But how I came to find that out was that the one day I was just like, I gotta go home because I get in trouble if I'm not home on time. I
Yeah.
like bad things happen. I'm at home if you're not following the rules. So peace, see you guys later. The next day I come back to school, and half of the people are bruised up and cut up, and the other half are suspended, because apparently the reason that everybody was staying behind that day is because there was going to be a big brawl between norteños and sureños. And
Oh my gosh.
I was like, what? Like, you guys go to school to fight? Like, the nuns in my school would have beat you up if you try to fight somebody.
Yeah.
You know, like what? So like all this culture shock was just so beyond. It's baffling. It's baffling to tell it. because it's such a, like it feels like a fever dream. Like, did I dream all this stuff? Like, did that really happen?
Yeah.
And I really don't have like other people that I can go and be like, that happened, right? That happened,
Right.
right? Because of the, our separation of my family and all the wounds that left. I don't even have the chance to go to my own parents and say, hey, like that happened, right? And
Right.
so I
Yeah.
have to validate, justify that these experiences are my experiences and that they existed and that they were really hard and that somehow I made them. And good for me, because I'm an
Yeah.
awesome adult and somehow I made it out of that.
Yeah.
But the code switching was something that, I have to thank my upbringing as a Jehovah's Witness. I was knocking doors when I was 6, 7 years old, trying to tell you about
Sure.
the Bible. And so you are prepared. Like, how is this person going to come at you? And what are you going to say? And so all these parts of me that maybe even like the ones that are not even relevant anymore, I look at all of them with like such amazement, but also with so much gratitude, because
Mm-hmm.
even the parts that no longer fit in my life anymore have inevitably shaped who I am. And I am
100%.
so thankful for them. For a long time, I've been angry. I was sad. I was like, there's a lot of parts that I had to do a lot of work through. But there is this now kind of place around my own life that I'm like, knocking those doors at 6 years old, I guess helps, because now I have this podcast. Let me tell you all my opinions and all the things that I think about, because listen, what else is there to do with your
Yeah.
thoughts and your
Well,
opinions and share them?
and then also this ability to talk to a lot of different people and yeah, and figure out how to navigate these different situations too. I mean, that is interesting that you're like attributing that to the ability to code switch and like, oh, I totally see that thread. I see how that's connected and how, again, that code switching in the United States, then it brought you not just survival, but it brought you other opportunities. It brought you success. It brought you access. And this is what we have to do. And then there becomes this point, I find this is like, there becomes this point in our lives where we suddenly realize, why am I doing this? Who am I if I don't do this? And how do I figure that out? And this is something that like I've like talked through this in my own journey with therapy too, and with other people and just like conversations that I have with folks. And it's like, it's not, it doesn't all happen at once. And I realize in reflection, like that moment was actually an unconscious thing that I did when I was much younger than I thought I was. But it happened to me when I was 17 and I moved away for college. And that was like the beginning of me trying to figure out who I was without my family, dictating so much to me. But this whole process is like, then you start to deepen this of like, man, how long have I been doing this for?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
like, how do I get to know the like essence of who I am? And I can still be all of these other people because they always will be a part of me. But like at my core, who am I?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's like a really hard identity question for a lot of immigrants and children of immigrants. I just like, this is again like a common theme that keeps coming up is like, who the hell are we on our own without all
Yeah.
of these other things that we've learned to do to survive and get through?
Because all of my best qualities are definitely tied into survival. And I love them and I make a living out of it. And I am
Yeah.
a great friend, a great wife, a great auntie because of all of these things that have happened. But man, it's been a lot in there. And so
Yeah.
then let me tell you then how I ended up entering this other journey that you're talking about, because that also is another part of my fever dream. Changed my major to sociology, right? But it never occurred to me to think about what do people do with sociology degrees, because as an architect and engineer, which are my original sort of jobs, you go build things. In my
Yeah.
head, it's like, I'm going to go build things, whatever that is. And so then I end up with the sociology degree and I'm just like, I went on Google. I remember, what do people with sociology degrees do? Because I had no idea of what it
Yeah.
was. And I had already moved out. I had a very rocky relationship with my parents. So I couldn't like ask them. My boyfriend was like not very dedicated to school. So we were just both lost at that point, right? And so then I went on Google, and then it said people with sociology degrees, they work at nonprofits and educational places and whatever. And I was like, what's a nonprofit? Like, girl, like the things that I've had to figure it out one step at a time,
Yeah.
and the patience that I've had to do that, it's amazing, because it's like, I don't know what that means. Let me look it up. And then and that leads to the next question and the next question. And so then I end up with this like nonprofits. And I was like, oh, cool. So I go to monster.com, because that's where you used to go look for jobs
back in the day.
And I'm like, nonprofit jobs. And then this bilingual case manager at a mental health clinic job comes up. And so then I went and I interviewed, and I got the job because I was bilingual, and probably because I had a killer interview. I don't remember, but I was there. And so then I started.
No, wait, I want to say, because you did have a killer interview, don't like downplay that. I just
Well,
like, we do that.
I hope I did. I'm sure I did. And, I end up in this position with a lot of responsibilities. I'm pretty sure I did. And I end up running a senior Spanish speaking group. Right. And so basically at this clinic, there were a lot of people that were with severe mental health issues. And so they didn't work. And so we used to have rotating groups of different things that we did. And so then this group, it was like Spanish speaking viejitos, like everybody was like a senior. And so then at first it was like, let's talk. And then nobody wanted to talk. And so I started bringing arts and crafts, and I would bring this, and I would go to the Dollar Tree. And so then we start chatting up and doing like little, and then everybody would tell everybody else, en la clínica hay una muchacha que habla español. At the clinic, there's this girl that speaks Spanish and she'll help you. Because then I was just like, oh, I don't know. Let me find out. And so then the same thing that I had been doing, like I did it for them. And so then I started having this group of like 30 people that would come to my group to do arts and crafts, because I didn't realize what I was doing was actually helping them.
Yeah.
I was just doing my job. Like, they told me to run this group, so I just need to have people and show that people show up, and the attendance, even like my metrics of measuring that were like, people show up, so it must be working. Yeah. So then my friend Alicia is applying to grad school, because everybody that was working at the clinic had the next step of becoming a therapist. I wasn't there yet. I was just still here. Like, this is the next step. I haven't figured out the next one. And so then the clinical supervisor and the program director were writing her recommendation letters. This was in November. I had graduated from Sac State that December. And so then the next November comes, and Alicia is applying for grad school. And I'm like, oh, what are you doing? And Rachel is looking at her statement. This person is writing a letter of reg. This other person is writing a letter of reg. And the clinical supervisor is like, what about you? Have you ever thought about going to grad school? And I was like, I don't know. Like, maybe. What do you go to grad school for? Isn't it enough to have like your bachelor's? And I had no idea. So this whole group of women that saw something in me that I couldn't see yet, they were like, just apply and see what happens. You would be a really good therapist. And so somebody says, I'll review your personal statement. I'll write you a letter. And so within a week's time, I submitted my grad school application. By the next January, I was enrolled in grad school to become a therapist. But I had no idea what that would entail, and that would open up a whole world about myself that I was not ready to be with, because I didn't even know that there was something that you could do or should do.
Yeah.
And so grad school ripped me open.
Yeah.
Because being a therapist is one of those the professions that you really can only go as far as you understand yourself. And
of course,
the schooling prepares you by having you look at your story. One, I feel like that was like a first bout of depression that I had, but I also was the first time that I could feel angry at all these things that had happened. And I could feel the injustice and the what? Like, these things were not supposed to happen? Like, these things are unhealthy? These dynamics and this way of communicating and hurting your children, that's not supposed to happen. What do you mean? This has been my life.
Right.
And that was tough. That was really, really tough.
Did you feel like I mean, what I am kind of envisioning from everything you've shared is like the veil was lifted, or like the bubble was kind of popped of I've just been in this mode of like making shit happen, doing the things I'm supposed to do, like accepting everything that is, not questioning anything, and just like making sure I do the things that I need to do. And then suddenly you're being told and like forced to sit and evaluate this in your own life. And again, yeah, the like visual I came up with is like suddenly the veil is just lifted.
Yeah. Yeah. In my child and adolescence class, I remember to this day that the professor did a guided meditation where, like, the guided meditation was about close your eyes and imagine the first time that you were a child. And what we were going to talk about is how your childhood sets up your adult mental health, right? And I was like, okay. And I'm just sitting there and I'm like, nothing's coming. Nothing's coming. Nothing's coming. What? Like, do I not have any memories of like my childhood and who I've been and who I was? And that, I've come to kind of make sense of it. It's just that I was in such survival mode that even my
Yeah.
brain did not have space or found the necessity of creating memories of a lot
Yeah.
of these things that I experienced. Because one, if I would have been aware of how painful all these things were,
Yeah.
and all the things in between, that there's no time and space or maybe need to share them now, but like the cruelty that I experienced, the adults are mean to kids.
Yeah.
Adults are mean to kids that are vulnerable. At least my adults were.
Yeah.
And that class, when everybody opened their eyes and so is sharing and so is
Yeah.
sharing, and I'm just like, I
Yeah,
don't
you have
remember.
nothing.
I have
Yeah.
nothing. And then we start having the conversations about trauma and how trauma this and trauma that. And I just remember putting my head down on the desk and like in silence, tearing up because I could not comprehend it. Even at that moment, I still didn't comprehend what was happening.
Yeah.
And what was happening is that my brain was having like this firing battle inside of trying to access things that we had put away, far, far away, because they were too hard to be thinking about. And then I'm in grad school and I'm having to write papers about this, and I'm having to write papers about my family and about the dynamics and about diagnoses and about it. And I'm just like, oh my fucking God, everybody's mentally ill and
Yeah.
traumatized.
Yeah.
And so am I,
And this becomes like your own unfolding like therapy experience. It's like going to grad school. I mean, it tore you apart in a way that was like, I don't know, a huge, I can't even think of the phrase, but like rapid fire therapy basically is what
And
it
it
seems
feels
like.
very unconsensual, because
Yeah.
like you don't go, at least, and maybe if you research that you're going to become a therapist, maybe you know this, or like a lot of therapists that become therapists are like, oh, it's because I went to therapy when I was a little kid. And it's just like, yeah, no, I went because my friend told me I should, and
Yeah.
so I did,
Yeah.
so I went. And so
Yeah.
there was this like unconsensual nature of like having to investigate all these things in rapid fire, and then attempting to go back home and talk to my parents, or at least to my mom, about some of these things, and my mom being like, that's not how it happened. No, that's not true. That's not. And now I'm like, wait, I don't
Yeah.
remember a lot, but the things that I remember did happen. And so
Yeah.
my family also, like, I think like many Latina families, use silence and secrecy to protect each other from the reality of how painful all of this is if you sit down and look at it.
Yeah.
And so I also have compassion for the fact that I think my process of coming to discover all of these things was pretty dysregulating for my family, because they did not want to hear what I had to say about these things that I was learning and discovering. Because what's the point? Like, oh, we
Right.
made it and we're fine. And so there is this way in that my own sort of existence became like this unwelcome presence in my family, because I named the things that nobody wants to talk about. I found out that my grandfather had these 3 kids in LA. And so I Facebooked them, Googled them, and I found them. And I called one day and I was like, hey, this is who I am. Is this who you are? Like, tell me about you. I want to know your story.
Yeah.
My grandma gave me my grandfather's number, and I called him and I was like, hey, this is who I am. Are you my grandfather? Because I have some questions. I want to just get to know
Yeah.
you. And you know, in all of this ways, even like my mom used to joke that I'm like Dora the Exploradora, like Dora the Explorer, because like there is no turn, like stone that is gonna be left unturned if I find the value in it, you know.
Yeah.
But in the
Yeah.
same vein, that freedom to investigate, to be curious, because I've been able to balance the grief and the curiosity, and then now that I know all these things, I'm like amazed and fascinated by my own case study of my own life, because it's so textbook. It's so textbook. Like from
Yeah.
A to Z, I have papers that validate that how I
Minus the
feel is
whole
true.
Civil War migration thing. I don't know if it's so textful.
Well, but for people that experience war, they would have like this sort of textbook
Yeah.
responses to trauma as
Okay.
well,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
even like
Yeah.
those like little parts of just like, dang, okay. And for some reason, knowledge for me is power. And that has been such a powerful
100%.
tool for me to like contextualize and stop and say, well, that sucks. I am going to cry about it. I am going to feel really sad about it. I'm going to be really angry about it. And also, we did the best we could.
Yeah.
I really believe that. I really believe
Yeah.
that even in all the things that I know I deserved better, everybody was trying the best that they could based on the circumstances that they were all living. And love and light, I love and light, because that is
Yeah.
the only way that I've been able to survive, you know, the depthness of how wild a ride this has been.
And it takes so much inner work to get to that place of like, okay, well, I can at least accept that like people did the best they could with the tools that they had. And
It
it's
doesn't change
hard.
it. You know, I told you even before we started recording last night, I had like an anxious nightmare. I
Yeah.
generally don't have nightmares anymore, but in the thought of like, what am I going to talk about and where am I going to start? Because I had listened to your episode and it's like, just start where you feel, you know, it's a good starting point. And so I was like, where should I begin? And I think unconsciously I got myself anxious, and my dreams were,
Yeah.
this is a lot.
Yeah.
Right? And those are like the reminders, right? That I still, that you don't, just because you are handling this better, you're carrying it better, it doesn't mean that the legacy of that pain ceases to exist
Yeah.
and that it still
100%.
shows up. And you know, I told my wife, I woke up and I was just like really kind of like bummed out. Like I woke up with my heart pounding. She's like, "What? Are you okay?" And I was just like, "Oh, I just had a nightmare." And I grabbed my head and I was like, "Why do I still feel this way about these things?" And she like hugs me and she's like, "Because they're hard."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
They're not past tense." Because when they happen is past tense, but they still live within me. And sometimes it's hard when they kind of show up. And in the work, right, in therapy, that is exactly what I talk to my clients about, and why it has been even part of my own healing journey, to say, listen, like the goal is for this not to go away. Like it's impossible.
Right.
It is an unreasonable goal for you never to feel anything about this. Is to find a way to live with it, despite it, and to honor the relationships and the boundaries that you feel appropriate for whatever is meeting your life right now.
Yeah.
And as a first gen, as adult children of immigrants, there is a big taboo about talking badly about our parents, especially
Yes.
because there is this unredeemable debt that we feel that we carry because of the sacrifices that they made. But I think that it is important to see the humanity of our parents, because at the end of the day, my parents were just like little 20-year-olds immigrating to another country, leaving their children behind. And
Yeah.
I cannot imagine what that would be like, because I freak out when I leave my dogs when I go on vacation. And I can't imagine that
Yeah.
experience for them. And love and light,
Yeah.
you know, sucked for me, but love and light, you know, because that must have been hard.
100%. And I think, you know, what you described of like this, you know, having this nightmare last night and like this anxiety and all of this stuff, it's like with this specific season of the podcast, I have tried to be very intentional with making sure that people are comfortable with everything that they're sharing and the conversation, because it is such a like sensitive topic for so many people, and we are reliving so many things in this conversation, and maybe we can kind of like joke about it now or laugh a little bit, and at the same time it doesn't make it any less than what it actually is. Because like you said, it doesn't go away. We just have to figure out a way to work with it and
Mm-hmm.
navigate it, that it's not so overwhelming and encompassing our whole lives, but we're able to like, I've learned this tool through my own therapy of like, okay, I'm going to choose to open up this box right now, pull this out, play with it, do whatever I
Mm-hmm.
need to do, explore it, look at it from whatever different angles. And now it's time to put it away and close the box and walk away from that, because I need to be able to focus on this other thing now. And
Yeah.
like that kind of tool and practice and visualization is something that I feel like that's the goal of being able to like open it and close it. And like, I'm not ignoring it. It's
Yep.
still there,
Yeah.
but I can choose when and how I approach it.
Yep. It's compartmentalizing, but not for avoidance, right? Because a lot of times
Exactly.
we compartmentalize to avoid, but this is a compartmentalization that is about internal emotional boundaries.
Yeah.
Can you enact boundaries within yourself so that, this is a part of my story and my life, but there are so many other parts of my story and my life that are just beautiful and amazing, and I love them. And so each part has a season. And I have personally been struggling this summer with the imagery of the
Yeah.
raids and the
Yeah.
separation and the children. And just yesterday there was this father screaming like, my children, my children. I'm like, oh my God, like what a hard decision
Yeah.
all these parents, my parents, had to do to like choose, to make a living, to provide for your family,
Yeah.
but at the cost of like other things to your family, and so it's really hard. And going back to like the point of like, I think it's important that we see the humanity in our families and in our parents, because
Hmm.
when we have a balanced view of who they are, not as superheroes, but as actually as people who also struggle with their own
Yeah.
things, who have gone years without support for the things that we're getting the privilege to get support on. It, to me, the way that I see it is that it helps share the weight of it all with the
Mm.
other people, but also with the systems that have been responsible for creating this
Yeah.
moment in which you are in your suffering. Suffering
Yeah.
doesn't happen in a capsule, in a vacuum. Your own mental health struggles, they don't happen just because you can't push through, or you can't, you don't have the grit. Like, no. It's like we have to share the responsibility of how we got to this point, and now the responsibility to make different choices and to understand yourself. And in therapy, I see it kind of in these three parts. When we're self-aware of all the parts, then we can decide what stays, what goes, what needs to heal, what needs to be forgiven, what needs to be put away, what needs to. So then we can get to make value-driven choices.
Mm.
The more you understand yourself, then the more that your choices then become in alignment with who you are. But when we only have one-sided views of people, it would be
Hmm.
hard to then balance out these things that you're feeling and experiencing, because you run the risk of seeing it as a personal responsibility or a personal failure or a personal hardship, when it really is not. It
Right.
is a systemic of nature, and it goes all the way to colonization and before, and the roots are old and deep, and your mental health and your struggles and the barriers that you're experiencing are by design. And some
Yeah.
people are more susceptible to be impacted by them. Some people have better avoiding mechanisms, right? Like some people are like, oh, I just wish that I could be like other people and ignore this. And for some people, that avoidance is a coping mechanism, and they arguably maybe feel better about it. But there's also some of us that need to understand our story in order
Hmm.
to then be able to carry it better with choice and with consent. Because I feel like
Hmm.
that's the difference between my first journey of like rapid fire finding out all these things to where I'm at now in my own process of healing, where I've had to be very conscientious of like, how much am I allowing myself to process so that it's healthy and not overwhelming. Because also, as a first gen who is strange from her parents, because that initial separation, my family didn't recover from. When I came out at 26, being queer, they said,
Yeah.
nope, you can't be queer in our daughter. And so, bye.
Yeah.
And so, if they would have if they would have raised me as a 6-year-old, would they still love me if I was queer? Like, that's like
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
that's like the little wound, right? Like, if we would have not had this 9 years of separation and they would have learned to love me in all the ways that I am, would they not rejected me because I'm
Yeah.
queer? I will never know.
Right.
But my family has been deeply impacted by all these things, and my mental health end result has had a direct correlation from all these layers that I can both have compassion, love towards, but also valid feelings of anger, injustice, and frustration. And I think that that is something that is important for me to, for people who are connected to these immigration stories, to think about who do you share this with, but also how do you share the compassion and the love with them and with yourself.
Yeah.
Because I gotta have a lot of compassion for myself, because the moments when I'm triggered, like last night when I woke up and I'm just like, literally, I put my hands in my head and I was like, why do I still have? And, I'm thankful that my wife was just like there to be able to say, it's just hard. It
Yeah.
sucks. You're
Yeah.
triggered. You're going to be talking about this stuff today. And I was like, you're right. I am going to be talking about this stuff today. So my brain is just like,
Yeah.
preparing
Bringing it
and
all up.
thinking, bringing it all
Exactly.
up, and so my hope, is that people can be more compassionate with themselves when these things show up, and especially when they don't feel like they make sense, or they're like, they didn't happen to me, so like, why am I so impacted by
Yeah.
it? Is because you potentially are experiencing the symptoms of this intergenerational passing down of healthy and unhealthy coping mechanisms, but also anxiety and
Hmm.
worldview, and all of these things do not exist just by yourself. And so for those who maybe have struggled with like their own depression or their own anxiety, or like just feeling like, why can't I shake these things off, have compassion with yourself, because this is a lot.
Yeah.
This is a lot. And I know
Yeah.
my story, as much as a lot, it feels, there's other stories that feel a lot. And I just want to say, like, if you're feeling all these feelings for me right now, let's take a little pause, because this is also about you, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. I mean, I think that so many of us who are empathetic can be compassionate for other people, and then it's hard for us to have that same compassion for ourselves
Mm-hmm.
and kindness. And I know that this summer, I mean, even really this spring was really hard for a lot of people. I think it should have been hard, emotionally hard for anybody, any human being. It is, I don't know. I have these conversations and thoughts about how like we are literally all connected in one way or another. Like
Mm-hmm.
maybe people think that's really woo woo, but it's like it's not. There
It's
is
not.
this human connection that we all have that people are trying to sever.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what these really violent actions are all about.
Mm-hmm.
And it is just showing our humanity when we do have an emotional response to the videos and the photos and the written accounts and the letters. I mean, like, it is normal in my mind. Like, that's the conclusion I've come to
Yeah.
this year, is like, this is normal for me to feel this way when I see these things and I
Yeah.
read these things. And having this compassion for people, and then being able to say like, yeah, it's hard. That's why I'm having a hard time today, because that was fucking hard to
Mm-hmm.
see and read and all of this stuff.
Yeah.
And how can I continue forward?
Mm-hmm.
How can I take care of myself and my community and people and everything around me to continue forward and like see the beauty still? Because
Mm-hmm.
that is there, and that like you said, there are always going to be all of these beautiful aspects to your life and your upbringing and who you are, and it lives adjacent to the hard shit too. And
Mm-hmm.
like, that's okay.
Yeah. All of it
Yeah.
is true all at the same time. And I think to your point of interconnectedness, I think that part of the tool of the system, how the system uses this desensitization and just normalization of like, if you are scrolling and you see a child in Gaza and
Yeah.
starving and you're just go through without feeling nothing, man,
Oof.
like the system's done this job.
Yeah.
Your
Yeah.
humanity is still supposed to feel a little
Yeah.
bit right now. Do we
Yeah.
want to have boundaries? Do we want to take care of ourselves about how we engage with this information? But like, my gift is to feel this much,
A
is to
hundred
hate
percent.
it because, oh my God, crying sucks and it's so
Yeah.
depleting and it's so
Yeah.
emotional. But like, I love that I feel this much because I am reminded that I'm not alone, and I am reminded constantly that there's lots of people that care just as much as I do.
Yeah.
And that when we think about those people, and my friend Sophia, told me this about like, send them love and light. Like when there is something good that happens in the world, remember that a whole lot of people came together to make that happen. And I'm just
Yeah.
like, you know what? As much as hardship and terrible things are in this world, and man, like how I wish all of that would go away now immediately, because no child deserves to experience war. I can tell you, as a child that experienced war,
Yeah.
marks you your entire life, and I can't even imagine to that degree, right? Because like,
Yeah.
and so our humanity is our gift, our humanity, being able to feel these things, being able to be connected with the ancestral pain, with the pain that our
Mm-hmm.
families of origin sometimes haven't had words to name.
Mm-hmm.
It sucks and it's painful.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry it has to be you that is the feeler and
Mm-hmm.
the one that is the cycle breaker, because
Mm-hmm.
it's going to crack you
Yeah.
apart. But the hope is that you can find a way. At least for me, I have found a way to carry all this with a balance and with grace and with compassion, minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day, even when I think all of it is good and that reminder comes and it's just like, yep, I'm still a person who went through a lot and that sucks, But that compassion and that kindness and being able to carry our pain with grace and understanding, but also systemic responsibility, because this system participated actively in getting you
Yeah.
and your family where you're at. To me, like, that brings me relief, and is why I do the work that I do. And however, that story of that resilient 16-year-old that got her grades counted, got into sex ed, and then went to grad school all in this whim, however that happened, I am glad that it did, because I am doing the work that heals me every day, but also to
Mm-hmm.
be able to help people carry the stories a little bit better, and to be able to wake up from that nightmare that they have, and to show compassion to themselves and say, yeah, it feels hard because it is hard.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I get to do that for a living, and it came from some really, really hard and dark places, but I love it and it
Yeah.
matters, and I wouldn't change it as hard as it is, you know? It's
Yeah, I mean, God, this whole like being a feeler, and having all of that. It's so funny. I was thinking about that earlier today. I was like, man, I as a kid had big emotions, like big feelings, and I don't remember my family knowing how to handle it. I remember my grandma, my abuela, she was just like one day being like, you're so short because you cry so much. Like that was her thing. Like you cry too much. That's why you're so short. Like, no, not the fact that my fucking whole family is so fucking short. Like
your
like
tears are
that's
keeping you short.
yeah. And it was such a weird, like what a weird thing to tell a kid, or even just, yeah, I mean, I have several of those memories. And I think a lot of that is, when I look at the perspective of not just my parents, but my grandparents and what they had to do. And it was just like, you just make it happen. You have to. And I feel like that's kind of similar to what you were experiencing as a teenager. Is like, you just have to make it happen. There's no time to pause
Mm-hmm.
and think about like how I feel about this. Like, no, I need to do the thing. I am in survival mode. I am here to make sure that I accomplish the thing that I set out to,
Mm-hmm.
because there is no other option. the other option is war, you know, a really terrible life. And so what, you know, that's not the option. And I can look back on that and kind of reflect and see. And then also learning to hold space for that little kid who's like, these people are just telling me to stop crying
Yeah.
because it's making me short.
Yeah.
Like,
And you know, the thought that comes to me as you say that, right? Because I'm like, yeah, I was a feeler kid too, but I was an angry kid. My feelings
mm-hmm.
were anger,
Yeah.
frustration, mouthy. Like I got burra, malcriada, you know, all of the
Yeah.
words that
Yeah.
you tell people to not talk about the hard things, right? And so
Yeah.
feelers also comes in both like the tears, but also in like the way that like anger shows up. And I think that sometimes is also like a stigma of like talking about why so many of us are angry and why so many of
Yeah.
us treat each other poorly in our relationships at times is because
Mm.
this legacy of putting our feelings away. The feelings are going to find a way to show up, and
Mm-hmm.
it's going to feel, you know, confusing when you're in your home, whether it's the tears or whether it's the anger. There is no adult that comes and says, you're feeling a lot, you're a little angry, what's going on, you're crying a lot, what's
Mm-hmm.
going on, right? Like that has not been the experience for many of us. And so what a gift to be in a generation that is allowing ourselves little by little to have these conversations and to discover it, to give meaning,
Yeah.
to offer grace and compassion. And that's the thing, you know, when I teach a family systems class, which is basically I take my students through the class that broke my heart. I take them through it,
Mm-hmm.
but a little bit different because I remember what it did to me. But funny enough, that's the class that I teach. And so I have them kind of start with a visual imagery of like who's accompanying you today, as we're gonna take this
Mm.
class where we're gonna look at our story. You know, who is with you today? Like, close your eyes and imagine like all these people that are here with you, and ask them permission to look at this story and, you know, assure them that it's for a purpose of growth and honoring and healing and growth and learning, because we are carrying them all. And when we don't know what to do with all these people that we carry with us, that's where like this clashes and our well-being really show up. And you know, there are organic factors to why some people are more affected in their mental health than others, right? But I do think that we all are interconnected to those who are with us right now and those who we come from, including the
Mm-hmm.
people that we don't know about. And so if you can extend compassion to yourself, but also to everybody who walked that story with you, I think it makes a difference. At least it has for
Yeah.
me, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Man, I didn't know any of this before this conversation about you. Like, what a wild. I'm so, yeah, like impressed and in awe and just
Mm.
like holy shit, you know, it is this piece too of history that like I said at the beginning, like we need to be talking about this. Like people need to be aware of these situations. And it wasn't just El Salvador, like you mentioned too, like Nicaragua, Panama, like all of these other nations. Look up US imperialism in Latin America, and there are so many accounts of this craziness. And I wanted to kind of ask here too, really backing up, kind of like, yeah, really backing up. But I wanted to ask to clarify, because we talked about this a little bit before we started recording, is that, and you touched on it, is it took like 9 years for
Mm-hmm.
your parents to be able to get status or like come back and get you and then come to the United States. Like it is this crazy process. And can you tell us a little bit about what that actual process was? Do you know those
Yeah,
details?
so I know some parts of it, like there are some details that I may not accurately have, but
Sure.
the gist of it is that my mom became a nanny for a family in LA that was politicians, and
Mm-hmm.
they were, I don't know, where sociopolitical in that 1990, 91, where the US was. So like, I can't connect it to that, but that family they couldn't have an undocumented
Mm-hmm.
nanny out of the fact that they were in politics. And
Yeah.
so they became the sponsors for my mom.
Yeah.
And my
Okay.
dad on his own had applied for refugee status because of being Jehovah's Witness. Part of being Jehovah's
Mhm.
Witness is that you have a religious exemption from joining
Right.
the military or the guerrilla.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad, a 20-year-old guy, kept getting recruited and recruited and recruited, and because of religion he couldn't. And then there is a story that's really scary that of what happened, that also kind of led to this conversations of like, if you stay and you don't join either side, you also are like in this other risk. So then he was able to qualify for refugee status. So my parents sort of individually had these two cases that were
Oh, wow.
going hand to hand. My mom was able to get a permit about 95, I think. She went for like a week to see us. My dad couldn't leave because the refugee status didn't allow it, but my mom was able to get a permit. And then at year 8, she had to do a castigo, like a punishment. So when you come
Mm-hmm.
undocumented, you cross undocumented to the United States, you have to pay a $10,000 penalty. So my parents also working as
Mm-hmm.
nannies, underpaid, overworked, and this like labor jobs. They also had to spend a lot of money for this process.
Mm-hmm.
My understanding is like way over $10,000 in the
Mm-hmm.
90s.
Yeah.
And she was then kicked out for a year. She had to go to El Salvador to do this punishment, which then they had to leave us again. And then my grandma
Mm-hmm.
didn't want us anymore, so they left us with the other grandma. So lots and lots and lots of
Mm-hmm.
things. And then my mom they finally, when she came back, she had to work for another 6 months to show that she had a reliable income. And then they were able to finally approve our documentation. And
Yeah.
so in the meanwhile, in El Salvador, my grandma would take us to the embassy to do interviews, to show
Yeah.
paperwork. And so there was this like nature of like, be a good kid, be a good kid,
Yeah.
be polite, be like well behaved, because all of these processes were also about moral character. Like you had to
Yeah.
show that you were like a good person. And so
Mhm.
that is the process that took the 9 years from 1990, when my mom left, like around February 1990 to February 99, which
Yeah.
is when we became documented. And I've been now in the United States for 26 years,
Yeah.
documented, and so I was able to go to college and I was able to do all these
Right.
things. And that came at a big price of the social emotional well-being of my family unit, but you know
Yeah.
do it the right way.
Uh-huh.
It's so
Yeah, I mean,
complicated.
exactly. And that's that phrase. I mean, yeah, that phrase of like, do it the right way. It just, people don't understand not just the emotional toll, but the financial piece, that people really don't understand what is actually required. And today it's even harder. There is literally a list of countries where these are the exceptions to the
Hmm.
rule, and the rule is, I mean, yeah, these are the exceptions to the rule. These countries, because they are quote unquote wealthier, they are quote unquote better people, it's a little bit easier for them to come here. But everybody else, you have to have X amount of dollars in the bank and assets, and have this level of moral character, and wait this long, and go to this many appointments and check-ins and show up to court and all of this stuff. And it is a fallacy that that there is a
That there's a pathway,
pathway. Yeah,
absolutely not. And as you say that, it's like the likelihood, would you as an American citizen sponsor a family if somebody came and told
exactly.
you sponsor me, right? And so the fact that like my mom, for whatever reason, this family was, whether because it benefited them, right? She was raising their children, and so they
Yeah,
felt like a certain obligation to give back or gratitude, right? But that in itself, like how many of us today, if somebody came and said, "Can you sponsor me because I need
right.
this?" How many of us would do it?
Yeah.
because you also
How
have
many of
to
us would even
know.
know what that means
Yeah,
though? And like
because you
what
also
is
have to
that?
have money, you have to have stability,
Mhm.
you have to have all these things, and it's like, what do you mean? Like, I don't know how. I
Yeah.
can't. I'm still also going day to day, whatever it would be. And it's no judgment, right? But I'm just saying, like, the
Yeah.
amount of effort and the cooperation of other people, the support for other people, the community, that's also that I don't think people are aware of what it
Yeah.
requires to get to this place of getting documented. And
Yeah.
I am both thankful for the opportunities, because I am a person who thrive in my identity as a student, and I am ambitious, and I am a learner, and I couldn't imagine the heartbreak of like what would have been like to be here and not be able to do those things that
Mhm.
I enjoy so much because of documentation status, because it is a barrier, financial aid, admissions,
Mhm.
employment opportunities after, all those
Mhm.
things. And the toll, right? It's like this. I can't choose either which one I would have preferred. It's just what happened. But both ends are hard. And so for the families that currently are being separated, like I send I send loving thoughts, and I am committed. I am committed to educating the therapists of the future that are going to be serving these families as this
Yeah.
continues to. That therapy has to be inclusive of the systemic awareness of why this family is in the position that they're in, and that none of us can, you know, have any type of judgment about how a family shows up, because we do not know the layers and layers and layers that have gotten those people there. And so my hope as I teach my students is like this awareness that they too are part of this greater community of humans in this planet Earth, and that as therapists we also belong to that part of community, because in our therapy world we call ourselves the wounded healers, right? Like many of us
Mm.
are great at these jobs because we know the pain very, very, very close
Yeah.
by. And so I want to share my story so that people know that there is a happy ending. I love my life. I'm like
Yeah.
really happy. It's like really awesome. There's some parts that wish could be better, but who doesn't?
But exactly.
But there
That's
is another
life.
side, there is another side where you can carry these stories better, differently, healthier. And then for my clients, that I see their families also, the ripple effects that their work starts having on
Yeah.
their families. I also specialize in adult family therapy. So I also have adult families come and have these conversations about their family history and like how they're going to make decisions, improve their communication,
Mhm.
establish boundaries. And so, adult family therapy, couples therapy for family, like people that are beginning to form their family and helping them
Yeah.
weed these things out, whether
Yeah.
it's reactive because they're already in the deep end of it, or proactive because they're like, hey, we come from different worlds and we need to understand. I am just delighted to have the opportunity to be so directly able to use my own story to
Yeah.
push me forward to serve in this way. And I hope that more people, can find a way to carry their stories for their service to their own life, because this serves me. I have healed and continue to heal as I walk this walk with people. But also, man, I get to see people get better at
Yeah.
living with all of these very painful truths.
Yeah.
And that contradiction is a beautiful thing to witness.
No, I think, yeah, that's a beautiful way to take your experience and create something so impactful out of it for so many other people. And I really like this like idea of it's not just for the person who you're working with right then, but it's for the next generation as well,
Absolutely.
and how that work today is impacting future generations. Yeah, this is a concept that I had been thinking about earlier this summer too, is like how can we be good future ancestors? So how
Mm-hmm.
can we take care of ourselves today to ensure that we are helping the next generations, whether that is our children or their children and children's children, like because we know that these things carry on from generation to generation.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
yeah.
in my podcast is exactly that sentiment, you know, of like the tias, right? Like
Yeah.
the people that have been there, done that, because I am here because of my tia Ana, who emigrated in 1981.
Yeah.
And I don't get to be the tia that's bringing people over, but I get to be the tia that talks about this. And we matter. All of
Yeah.
us are already in our way to becoming ancestors, role models, mentors, and then also in the trenches with everybody else. Because I know that, you know, in my circle, I have people with equally heart-wrenching stories, and we're all in it together, trying to figure
Yeah.
out how to do it differently because we weren't taught how to do it, you know?
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
here we are.
I just want to say I every time in our little co-working cafecito time, you share something new and I'm like, damn, she's cool. Damn, she does some cool shit. Like, whoa, that's cool. And now this whole conversation that we've had, I'm like, whoa, who you are is incredible. And I'm so thankful to be connected with you, and I can't wait to like continue learning even more about you and who you are and what you're doing in all of these different spaces, not just as a therapist, but as, you know, a community builder, an educator, and a podcaster. And I already do enjoy listening to your podcast. And so, like, yeah, thank you for sharing so much
No,
and
thank
for
you for
reaching
the
out.
space.
Yeah.
You know, divine alignment. Like I said, you know, I reached out. I was like, I don't know if there is space, it's gonna work out. But I also, I've been needing a little bit of a space to share this, and so I'm so thankful for you for creating this space because it's hard. It's hard to
Yeah.
witness and to bear the stories of others and at the different places in their journey that they're in. And I am as healthy as I possibly can be. I'm sure there is more work to do, but right now, life is good. And I
That's
deserve that.
awesome.
After all of
Yeah.
that, I deserve that.
100%.
So it's
Yes.
good.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I feel like I'm now like even extra. I'm excited to get this episode out there because I think that it's going to be in perfect alignment with the next episode after yours and all of the things that we explore and what we end that episode with. And just a little teaser for everybody there. So, yeah, this is going to be again, thank you so much for sharing so
Thank
much.
you.
And I can't wait to hear more from you. And thank you.
We're in now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Oh,
love
yeah.
Portland, so I also like that's one
Great.
of my favorite cities. So I'll be over there
Great.
soon.
Yeah. Awesome. Yes. Yes. Come on up. Yeah. Well, yes, again, Adri, thank you for being here. And thank you all for listening. My name
Thank you.
is Madeline Longoria Garcia, and these are our other stories. You can stream this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, AntennaPod, and anywhere else you do your listening. You can also watch it on YouTube. Thank you for being here, and have a wonderful day.